have a great privilege. I'm holding this because Dan Anderson from Kids Alive, one of our missionaries that we support, is going to speak today. And just a quick introduction of Dan. Dan is the director for Kids Alive Peru. He used to run one particular ministry, but now he's over the whole country. And Dan is developing some visions and desires for that country that he wants to present to us today. And I want you to know that coming back to my verse I started with, that Paul is in labor till Christ is formed in the Galatians. And that's my desire for all of us. And part of Christ being formed in us is a heart for the lost, a heart for the poor, and a heart for people that we don't never even met before all over the world. And so Dan's is supported by this church. The money you give to this church, part of that goes to Dan and Katie and their 4 kids in the ministry down there. We just had a mission trip there, and Teresa and I and the Ornellises and several other people, about 11 of us went down, and we've seen firsthand the success they have in ministering to children and to families. It's amazing what's happening down there. We want to present it to you guys today. But understand this, we're presenting this not just for information, but also to enlist you to be partners with them. Partners in prayer, partners in going, partners in giving. So know that that's our hearts today. We're not trying to hide anything. We're presenting something to you today to say, hey, how can you help Kids Alive? And I want to read Matthew 19:14. Jesus says, when the children came to Jesus, the disciples stopped them. It's kind of like, oh, I gotta be careful here. The old codgers keeping the kids away. And Jesus said, stop that. Permit the children to come to me, and do not hinder them. For such is the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven belongs to them. And so, Dan and Katie have dedicated their life to the children of Peru. If you're a visitor with us today, I want you to know this isn't normal. Nothing about this church is normal. But we're thrilled to have you here today. And we're in the book of 1 Peter. We'll get back to that next week. But I hope you were blessed today by hearing the ministry of Kids Alive from Peru. So as Dan comes up, I want to read to you Micah 6:8, which is something that thrills my heart as God speaking to me directly. Micah 6:8. He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. So let that filter through as Dan presents to us. Dan, it's a privilege to have you.
Yeah, thanks.
Welcome, Dan, please.
Well, thanks for having me. You can hear me, right? Thank you for having me. We were here last year, so some of you probably remember us. I was here with my family as well. And we hope to get up here again. I hope to bring them. My wife, Katie, as Tony mentioned, we have 4 children, Lucy, Lydia, Davy. Those are our 3 daughters. And then our youngest, his name is John. He's just about to turn 5. And right now, they're in Peru and waiting for me. But they'll come up and it'll be a lot better next time if they're here. Thank you so much for letting us have this chance to come and talk to you. It's not just myself, but Steve, who I want to present to you in just a little bit. But one thing I wanted to mention, I'm going to get into a little bit about who Kids Alive is, just to remind you, because you've heard it already. And then I want to go deeper today, and as Tony was mentioning, God's been giving us just new vision for Kids Alive in Peru, and He is leading us into new territory, and it's exciting, and it's a little overwhelming, and it's just really awesome. So I'm excited to share that with you. But the other thing that I'm really excited about, and that's been really cool in the last few years, has just been the connection with Cornerstone. So we had this random connection, which was that you sent a team, I think it was around 4 years ago, well, between 3 and 4 years ago, a team came from Cornerstone. There had been no contact with Kids Alive before. I remember it. It was a great time. Natalie led that trip a few years ago, and really good time. We were hoping to see you again, hoping to have another team down there someday. Then we didn't hear from you for a while. And then eventually I heard that this couple was going to be coming through, Barry and Mary Beth, and that they wanted to see the ministries. So my family, we ended up hanging out with them, going and seeing the ministries, and it was a great time. And then we didn't hear from y'all for a while. And I thought, okay, Cornerstone, goodbye. and then all of a sudden the connection was made again, and we were able to come through last year, share with you, see you guys, and then earlier this year you sent a team to come and see us. And now here I am. And God's just been doing this. Katie and I have been convinced for quite some time that God is moving here at the same time that he's moving. Some of this vision that we have for the ministries in Peru, there's this interesting and kind of strange connection here in Cornerstone because it was so random. It felt so random, but I don't think it was. I really think that God is moving here in preparation for the same thing that he's moving and doing there in Peru. So I'm excited to share vision with you all, and I hope you catch it, because one thing I love about this church as well is that what I hear from many of you, Tony, Teresa, I've heard it from, I think we were talking with Mario and Deborah, definitely Mary Beth and Barry, it's just, I don't hear you saying, hey, that's a nice ministry you have, and we help you. No, it's, how's our ministry in Peru? And that's how you should see it, because it is not our ministry over there in Peru. God has given, I think, every single person here in this church, because you support us, I think he has more for you, honestly, and I want to share that right now. Same as he has more for us. One cool thing about a church like yourself that commits to a ministry like Kids Alive Peru is that it really makes a difference for us. It makes a difference for our kids, for our staff. When we have return visitors, for instance, it's a big deal. I would like, Steve, I want to introduce, this is Steve Lewis. He's a Kids Alive International. So Kids Alive is in 13 countries around the world. We've been around for a little over 100 years, 102 years. Started in China, got the boot in like the 1950s, I think. And I was just talking to the director from Taiwan a few weeks ago. I met him for the first time, and they are starting to do medical campaigns back into China. And because there's not a direct affiliation anymore with Kids Alive US for Taiwan, they're fully self-sustained. They're actually going back into China where we started over 100 years ago, which is really cool. This is Steve. He's a representative of us. And one thing that about Steve is that he started to have an impact. He works for Kids Alive now. Started to have an impact on Kids Alive a long time before he was ever working for us. So can you share a little bit about, your involvement?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of speak primarily to the relationship that you as Cornerstone have with the ministry in Peru and how much that means. Each of you individually, and then especially just as a collective, what that can mean to your church family. I just got back from my 13th trip, taking a team down to Kids Alive Peru this month. My wife drugged me kicking and screaming on the first trip. This was over 10 years ago. I'm a giver, not a goer. Missions, what am I going to learn in missions? I can stay home, make money, and give. Those 2 weeks in Peru completely transformed my life in exactly the way that Pastor Tony's talking about. Watching Christ lived out in the hardest of situations to the least of these completely changed my view. And I came home fired up to get my church involved. And it took years, but now our church, like, as I mentioned, the 13th team just went down. Our kids have grown up with the missionary kids. When the missionaries come back, they stay at our house. I had a couple that through growing in Christ through multiple trips and sponsoring the site that we were at and being reported back, Kids Alive Peru, they're fantastic. You're always connected. It's so far gone from my growing up experience of going to the back of the church where there were the missionary pictures with the little thread drawing back and forth, and it was this far off thing that my family would send a check to. It's a vibrant life that you as a church family walk with the ministry down there. My favorite one example I'll give is I had a couple that had gone on trips together, and he let me know before a trip we were going down. He goes, I'm going to ask Shelly to marry me on this trip. Like, we have to get engaged in Peru. This is where our relationship needs to start. This is where God really bloomed in us and through our friendships that we've built through this relationship. So yeah, I just wanted to, and as a matter of fact, then 2 years ago, I was just so overwhelmed with what I'd seen. I had always run my own business. 2 years ago, I shuttered my business and went full-time with Kids Alive, doing exactly this. I wanted to tell people about it, how it transformed my life, but also how it transformed my church community, just collectively, and I've seen it over and over, and I just want to thank you guys for being... She did say yes. Great engagement pictures. We actually go to a site in the jungle. It was right on the Amazon. It was beautiful. Yeah, it was incredible. So thank you.
I don't need that. I got this. Thanks. So I wanted Steve to share, because not every single person here perhaps is called to do what Katie and I have been called to, but at the same time, Steve's a great encouragement to us. His church is a great encouragement, and when they come down time after time, and there's this relationship there, for our Peruvian staff and for the kids and families that we serve, when you see familiar faces, when you know that way across the world you have a church, you have part of the body of Christ that cares and that's connected, the projects and the things you come down to do, they're important, but honestly, that's more important. That connection right there, it's hugely encouraging to us. So thanks, Steve. We go to the next slide, or the slide. Okay, so here you've got, this is at our Oasis Care Center, our school. As I told you a little bit about Kids Alive, but to remind you, in Peru we've got 6 different ministries. We had 6. Actually, we just started a 7th different ministry. The focus, one ministry I really want to focus on talking to you right now is the ministry that we had your team earlier this year involved in. It's called the Manchai Oasis Care Center. And there, we work with families there. Kids Alive is always about rescuing kids and hope for the future, that they would know Christ and that they would also be able to have abundant life in Him. But, and sometimes that's in the form of children, orphans, abandoned children who we take care of and become family for. At the Oasis Care Center, we work with families in an area pretty hard hit through poverty. That is the Oasis Care Center right there. You can see it. It's in the middle of that community, the hills. It's a lot like Lake Tahoe without vegetation, kind of. You know, you got the hills and everything. But that is the care center, and working there, we work with a whole lot of families in that area. We provide a lot of different services. And as we are moving forward, we've been doing this for years, but as we're moving forward, as I had said, we have new vision and a new vision, I think, given to us by God to have a bigger impact and a wider impact all around us. The best way, I think, for me to share with you, though, what we do there is I want to tell you about a family that we serve, tell you a little bit about their story, and then about the impact the Oasis has been able to have for them. I think that's the best way. Next slide. You'll recognize some of the people in that picture. No, let's go back. Yeah, I'm going to stay here for a little while. You recognize some of the people in that picture. That's the team that came down, and one of the things that they did was go out and visit. You see the woman in the middle? Her name's Nellie. They went out to visit her. I'd like to tell you a little bit about her story. They're at her house right there, and just visiting, hearing from her, hearing her story, and getting a picture of what it's like, or what life is like for some of the people who are with us at the Oasis Care Center. She came in contact with us a few years ago, and things were pretty rough for her. It was just her and her kids. Right now, I know, team, you saw her house. It's not plush, it's not the nicest, but things have gotten a whole lot better for her, honestly. Things were really rough, and that's what the Oasis Care Center is there for. She was able to become a part of some of the programming we have for adults. We have a sewing workshop. She was in that, and as she was a part of that and going through that program, we had discipleship class. We had small budgeting, nutrition, stuff like that. It was this whole kind of package based at helping her to better be able to provide for her kids. At the same time, we have a school at the Oasis Care Center as well, and her kids were able to go there. One of the things I want to highlight for you, I'm definitely here because with this big vision, there's also more funding that is needed. We don't have what we need in order to do what I'm presenting to you right now. And that's one reason I'm here, is to bring this to you and say, I think I know where God wants us to go. We need help getting there. But one of the things that I want to present to you is the scholarships. So that her kids, there was no way she was going to be able to afford to let them be in our school and be with us. And what we do is we give scholarships to those families around us based on what comes in on donations, on what people are able to give, partnerships with churches like yourself and us. We can give more scholarships to families like hers. Her children were given scholarships. Now, we don't pay the whole thing, and that's important because it's really important, her dignity and the fact that she is able to, and she understands this, that she is fighting for her kids, that she is working for a better life for her kids. But what a scholarship is that whoever is giving towards that scholarship, you are partnering with her. You're taking a step forward, basically saying, I can help up to here. And then we work with her. We work with women like her, with families like their family, so that they take a step forward as well. And so, still for her, I remember when she started, she was still not able to make the payments. And so what she did is she would come in a couple hours a day and she would work at the Oasis. She was cleaning, she was doing what she could, and we were able to accept that as payment. The reason we were able to accept that as payment is that there were faithful people giving so that we could actually cover that cost, but without just making it a gift, right? The really awesome thing, though, is that she has really moved forward. Her children still receive scholarships, but they're much less. One of the greatest success stories for us is when a family who's there at the care center stops getting a scholarship with us. Because what that means is that they no longer need it. They're still able to be with us. We're still able to provide services for them. But that usually means we've been able to help them to step up and own that themselves. And in her case, we're still helping her, but it's less than it was before, and she's stepping forward. Another thing is that her kids are in our school, and they're in our afternoon program as well, so that when she's working in the afternoon, there's a safe place for them. Those of you who are there as a team, not the safest place necessarily, right? Well, if she didn't have us, then if she's working in the afternoon after school, her kids have nowhere to go but up to this little shack that's not secure. There's a lot of violence, there's a lot of abuse in this area, and kids just aren't safe up there. So that's another thing we're able to provide there in the afternoons for that family. And what has really been awesome has been to watch that family be able to take steps forward. She's a somewhat recent believer, 2 or 3 years ago, I believe. And so another thing that we're doing is walking forward with her in that. What she says and what many of her families say, and this is the thing I like most about the Oasis Care Center, is that when she talks about the Oasis and why she likes to be there, and we have many families who not in the same situation as her who still come in, whether it's just for, we have someone who does crafts in the afternoon, right? And we have so many women who come in and spend time. And what they say when we've asked them, when we've done surveys, they say it's safe. I feel safe. I feel good. I feel loved. And that because of that, and we really focus on that as staff. Because of that, it is a place where a family can step out of what they're in, which is difficult life, step out of that, and there's a lot of healing and restoration that takes place. And in her case, she is a believer, and she's on fire, and she has hope for the future. She knows that God has plans for her, and that where she's at now, which is not where she was earlier, she has faith that it's going to get better. She has faith for her children as well. Not all of that is material, obviously. It can't all be material, but what it means, she has hope. She knows God's with her. And it really, for us as a ministry, I think it's our job to obey our Heavenly Father, because we know He loves her. We know He has a hopeful and abundant future for her. And we definitely feel called to, because we love Him, because we're His children, we step forward with her. And that's what I'm inviting you all into. I had a slide earlier. We had some technical difficulties, but I do want you to know we have a table out here. We got a lot of material on it. I did have it kind of all detailed up here to kind of present to you our needs. I don't have that to show you right now, but there's quite a few things that you can help us with. Like I said, we have this vision for where we want to go. We don't have the finances to get there yet, and we would love to have your help. Steve's going to talk about that in a little bit, about how you can do that. But some of those things are providing to be able to give scholarships so that we can reach out to families like that. It's really, those families are being able to reach out to them is dependent on being able to give those scholarships, because otherwise they can't make it to us. And that way we help them cover the cost. It's that afternoon club. It's the outreach program, which is what was able to offer to Nellie those classes. There's a small business class as well to be a part of. A lot of that kind of stuff that enables us to reach out to parents. We have a occupational therapy program that we really want to start and I need to have the funding for it. A lot of our kids, they have a lot of hardship in their past, a lot of trauma. Early life was really disrupted, and so a lot of our kids have learning disabilities. We have a school, we work hard with them, but what we need is to get really good at working hard with kids who have learning disabilities so that they actually can have success with us. That's that you'll see on the table, we've got all this detail. We've got numbers there and everything. So if you have a heart for any of this, I would encourage you to come and take a look and see what you would like to be a part of. Can we go to the next slide? I want to change tracks here real quick, and I've kind of talked with you about the Oasis Care Center and what we're doing there, reaching out to families. There's another thing that we are moving forward as well in. We have been working for a while now at providing security for our children in the form of families. Working really hard at giving our kids families. Now this little boy, I've changed his name for privacy's sake, but I'm going to call him Jonathan. And he is a little boy. He's in one of our children's homes there. He is. We are working hard to provide him that security, but we need to go further than that. We have to go further, and we are going to take a step further. Jonathan, his story, he came to us when he just turned 6 years old. No, sorry, he was still 5 years old. Before he was brought to us, he was sleeping on the street for about a week, and that's only a small part of his story. And if you can imagine the trauma and the terror and what kind of walls you have to build around yourself if you're 5 and you are sleeping on the street and you have nowhere to go, all that has been part of what has formed Jonathan. And if we want to give Jonathan hope going forward, if he wants to be able to step forward, what he's got to do is he has to deal with that trauma. Jonathan has struggled since he's been, and it's been getting better and better, but when he feels threatened, and sometimes it's things that I don't recognize them as threats, when he feels threatened, he reacts in the way that he learned how to when he was living desperately at 5 years old and younger. I want to share with you a little story of something that happened recently. It was in the last, probably around 4 months ago, and it was with Jonathan. Can we go to the next slide? See this guy sitting on the swing? He's talking to a girl. His name's Martin. He's one of our staff at our children's home. He's one of my heroes. I've got a few heroes over there, but he's one of my heroes. He's sitting there. Let me talk about Jonathan first. No, sorry, I'll go here. He's sitting there and talking to this girl, and my wife took this picture, and she showed it to me later that same day. She said, "This is why I love Martin," because that girl had been a bit of a stinker that day, right? And yet there he is. He's sitting down with her. He's talking to her. She's got someone there who's not going to leave her, and who's not going to run away, and who's not going to turn away because of that behavior. So that's the security side of things. One thing is that we've been working on, and this is part of that bigger vision that I was telling you about, is we've been really working on trauma-informed care for our staff, learning how to understand where our kids have come from, learning how to meet them where they're at, and then helping our kids to get past the point where that trauma is what's actually controlling them. Controlling their behavior, controlling their defenses, because you need defenses when you've been through some really hard stuff like some of our kids have been through. And Martine has been trained in that. We go to the next slide. Wait a second. Yeah, I'm missing one. So Martine is the guy in the prior slide. Jonathan was having a meltdown. And Martine came up to him and used some of this training that we've had. So he went up to him. He got down close. He's about 5. He's 6 times his weight probably. He gets down at his level, and he says to Jonathan, he says, "What do you need? What do you need from me?" He was able to see past the instant behavior. And Jonathan's response was shocking for me. Jonathan looked at him, and Jonathan went past the behavior. Jonathan said, "I want a dad." He said, "Quiero un papá." And Martine, who has a huge heart, Martine looked at him. He said, "Well, Jonathan, at that time we didn't have house parents for him. We were looking." He said, "Jonathan, I'll be a papa to you if you want me to." And Jonathan said, "Okay." So how did he resolve that tantrum, that thing that was going on? He said, "Listen, Jonathan, I'll be your papa, but this isn't how we handle it. This isn't how we men handle this." And Jonathan said, "Okay." And they went through, they walked through, they redid it, and that that's just an example of, as we are learning, that was an example of Martine putting into practice some of what we're learning about trauma-informed care and how to actually reach out to these kids. Because if Martine had come in and dealt with the behavior right away, he would have actually missed the fact that Jonathan's just defending himself, and for very good reason. He learned how to do that. And what Jonathan needed, and what he was actually able to express, which is amazing, is, what do you need, Jonathan? I need someone who's strong enough, who can actually protect me, right? That's what he was saying. And if we can't get to that point with our kids, then we'll see what I've honestly seen too often in the 7 years that I've been down there. And that's where we have so many good success stories, but we also have, I've seen older kids, teenagers who have left their program and they're still being controlled by the past. They even kids that can jump through all the right hoops, but when they get out on their own, it's still that trauma that's controlling them, and they haven't got past that. And we want to get to where we can help more of them to get past that. Next slide. See the couple on the right? That's Jose and Kaylis, and they are Jonathan's new parents. Those are house parents in his house. Really cool story. Venezuelans, they had to leave their country. It was, and it's a hard story for them from what they had to leave behind. But they are there in Peru now, and they've come into the house, and it's amazing what the trauma, difficulty in their past that they were facing in Venezuela. It's amazing how that is being transformed into care and into their ability to help the kids in that house. Those three girls are members of the house as well. They're Jonathan's new sisters. And so right now, Jonathan he calls him dad. He decided to do so. He's got his dad, right? He's got his mom. And through that, security is what we want to provide, but also what Jonathan needs is, he also needs help in the form of counseling as well. I had a slide, now I'm not able to show it, I had technical difficulties getting it here. But basically what I wanted to present to you is that besides this work of getting better at trauma-informed care, we also need counselors to work with the kids. We have one counselor right now working at that children's home, but I need a staff of 4 more and able to actually have people who are trained to be able to walk through with our kids what they've been through, so that they can put that behind them, they can leave it behind. And that trained group of counselors, therapists, is going to work alongside our house staff, our house parents, as they are providing the security, so that we've got healing, security, and then there's one other area that I want to talk to you about now, and that's justice. Another area that we need to take a step forward in for our kids is justice. Can we go to the next slide now? I want to tell you another quick story, then I'm going to hand it over to Steve just to finish this off. But yeah, all right, okay. When I was talking to you about Jonathan, I was talking about, really I wanted to focus on 3 things, and that was our need to provide security. And I've kind of talked about some of how we're moving into that, or how we're doing that, but also health for the kids. I don't mean physical health. I'm talking about the counseling side of things. I'm talking about that our staff learning that trauma care, so that we can help them walk into health, where instead of holding him, where instead of Jonathan holding people off like this, instead he's able to put down his defenses. He's able to go to work with the people who are trustworthy in his life, come to a point where he's able to trust them. I want to mention real quickly too that for a lot of our kids, when they are unable to trust the, say, parental figures or authority figures in their life, they also have a real hard time trusting God, because thinking of him as my good father is difficult when that word does not mean good to them, or they have no understanding what it means. I got sidetracked there. And then, but anyways, I want to go back. I want to share you another quick, another thing. I mentioned security. I mentioned health for our kids. The third area, and this is an area we have to get better in, and we know we do. We're going to take a step forward. We are taking step forwards. Is the area of justice. We have a new ministry. It's called House of Glory. It's for young adolescent mothers and their children. We're in the process of investigating and waiting to hear if we're going to get 2 sisters to come into that ministry for us. Just a quick their story. Two young girls, 2 sisters. They've been going through abuse for a long time, and one of them, she's 12 years old and she's pregnant as a result of it. The 2 of them, if they come to be with us, are going to be coming out of a horrible situation, and yet there's family there. What we are going to be doing is investigating the situation because they have a mother there who I would like to think would love to have them. The sad story for too many of our kids is that too many times we've had kids with us who would be able to be reunited with family, and the reason that they can't is because the perpetrator is there going scot-free. Justice system is not where it should be there in Peru, and because of that, our kids are kept away from family. We recently hired a new lawyer for us. He's done a lot of work in this area in Peru. He's a bulldog with justice for children. I love working with him, love talking to him. We're also working, actually we need a couple new social workers to work underneath him, and what we're going to do, not even start doing, but what we'll be doing with those two girls, for instance, in order to work forward towards restoration as much as possible, is we're going to have to go after that justice piece. Unless we push that, likely that case is going to just sit and nothing's going to happen. So we are going to go after that. And if we're able to find justice for those two girls, and that perpetrator is no longer there, then the second thing we want to do is work in the area of health for the family. That's another reason I need these 4 counselors, because besides working with our kids, if we're able to go and work with mom or work with other family members, there's got to be a lot of trauma there as well. If we can work with her as well, what we hope is to get to the point where those 2 girls are able to be back with their family. We have to take care of that justice piece, and then we don't just want to say, okay, here you go, now you're set. We got to work on that the healthy part of it as well. By the way, their family, there's no way they'll have access to counseling. Don't know the family, no, they don't have access from where they're from, but we can provide that. We want to provide that, and we really believe that God is leading us into a more expanded form of what we do, so that in situations like that, our kids, there's just more hope for our kids. I think this is where God has taken us. I know this is where God is taking us. I don't know what I'm saying. I think he keeps showing us. And so that's another thing that we have out there in detailed as well. So for that one, if I'm going to have those 4 counselors and all the funding I need $49,000 a year in order to be able to do that. But I want to give these kids everything we possibly can. And so that's just one example of one of the costs we have. That's what I need per year in order to be able to provide that for our kids, provide that for our families. Not having that means those 2 girls, they can come to us, but I have a whole lot less that I can give to them. And the very fact that they have a mother at home who, if we were able to work with her, could take them back in, we have to go there. We gotta see if we can get them back. And that's just one example. We have quite a few kids who are in that situation. And that's why we're taking a step forward in justice and that whole healing piece. Can we move forward? I think the verses were the next part. I want to share something real quick since Tony's given me the time to do it. It's Tony's fault. Do you have the actual verses printed out? Can I see them? Because, I want to read them. God has given Katie and I this passage. It's from Psalm 97, verses 1 through 6. He's given it to us over and over in the past few months, and it's been hugely encouraging. And I want to share this with y'all. It's Psalm 97, verse 1. It starts with, "The Lord reigns, let the earth be glad, let the distant shores rejoice. Clouds and thick darkness surround him. Righteousness and justice are the foundation of his throne. Fire goes before him and consumes his foes on every side. His lightning lights up the world. The weather sees and trembles. The mountains melt like wax before the Lord of all the earth. The heavens proclaim his righteousness, and all people see his glory." Can you go back to the 3rd verse, please? Those verses, if you really focus on them, they can make you tremble a bit. Because God is that big. We don't always know it. He is that big. He is that powerful. The verse especially that God has given us over and over is, "Fire goes before him and consumes his foes on every side." That has been amazingly encouraging for us, because fire for God's foes, for his enemies, God's fire is a terrifying thing. But God's fire for us that know him is not terrifying. His fire cleanses us. His fire purifies. His fire goes before us and consumes his foes on every side. Katie and I have heard so much We've had so many encouraging things happen in the last few months. People praying with us, praying for us, talking to us. And then just over and over getting this, fire has just been this constant theme for us. When we were singing, you know the song, that one of the things he gave to us is the song we were singing. The fire before us. How does it go? I think it'd be better if someone else did. Yeah. That was one of the things he gave us, and just over and over that as he's been giving us new vision, that he's actually going before us and he is consuming his foes on every side. And what that is for our kids, the ones who've been hard hurt, the ones that are desperate, the ones that need him, that's not a scary thing. That is their papa. That is what they need. That's God's going before them, and he is cleansing before them. It goes along with the justice piece that I was talking about and everything. And so, like I was saying earlier, they're his kids. All these kids that we have there, we feel some ownership over them, but they're God's kids. They're his prodigal children that he's going after. And we need to not forget that. They're his kids, but we are his children as well. And he has decided that he wants to use us to go after these children that he loves. Convinced of that. And I think I know he wants to use you, Cornerstone. He already is, to go after these children that he loves. And do that in obedience for him. So, Steve, can you come up and talk just a little bit? Steve's going to share with you a little bit about how you can help. But I do want you to know, for us, just being here, it's a win. We love being here with y'all. And I thank you for already your involvement. If you're interested in more, even if you're not interested in more, please come talk to us. We're going to be here the next few days. You can talk about that. And we want to get to know more of you. We're going to stick around for a little while.
Yeah.
Please. Let me go sit down.
Yeah, I just wanted to invite you. The table is outside. There's one specific way that we're inviting you to participate, and that's through site partnership with the Oasis. Site partnership, as compared to some organizations with child sponsorship, and it's child focused, through being a site partner, everything that you heard about today, that Dan's trying to do, that God's doing through our people in Peru, you're participating with that. And that's what I focused on with my church as well. There's this wonderful collective body of Christ, shared experience through sponsoring the entire site and everything that's happening there. And so that opportunity's out there. Very straightforward. That's $100 a month or $1,200 a year. It can also be more or less. Just fill it in. That's just the way that is structured. Primarily, I just want to invite you to lunch afterwards. Dan and I are also here the next couple days. We're wide open on Tuesday. This is so much bigger, and God's doing so much more, even just in what you heard. If you have any questions about anything that you heard, we want to have coffee. We'll stay. We're staying. There's lunch available downstairs, but all day Tuesday as well. We just want to talk to you. We want to share more stories, answer your questions, and just be available to you and transparent to you. And just want to thank you so much, and thank Pastor Tony and your elders. Thank you for welcoming us and for being part of our family. Thank you.
Dan, a child wanting a dad. It's heart-wrenching. Family, it's been a privilege to be part of Kids Alive. It's unbelievable to see what goes on down there and the commitment that people have. Talk to Dan about his story. He grew up in Papua New Guinea as a missionary's child. Grew up in boarding schools. This guy is committed to helping the people of the world, and we got a chance to come alongside him and his wife, their team down there, and have an impact on them. And so what I want to do now, we were talking about doing an offering, passing the plate. And I decided not to do that. And here's why I decided not to do it. I have this belief, I've said it from up here before, I want to say it again, that I believe every Christian should be generous in 3 areas. You should be generous to the church you attend. You should be generous to a missionary. A missionary needs to be able to count on you as their partner. The Apostle Paul called the Philippians my partner and gave them credit that if they didn't support him, he couldn't do the work he was doing. And the third area, which is most of the context of New Testament giving, is giving to the poor. The majority of times the New Testament talks about giving is to help the poor. And this is an opportunity we have to step into these. And so I want to encourage you, wherever you choose to give your money, that consider the poor as a primary part of that. And this church has been amazing. I know last night was the Awaken banquet, and I'm more than certain many of you were generous there, and I thank you for that. And we would ask that you grab one of the missionaries of this church. And we have Dan here. We have Dan with Kids International. We have Mario with Young Life. We have Awaken. We have the Bradleys with Crisis Aid International. All those areas, I wish you'd grab one of those. But today we're highlighting Kids International. And if God has touched your heart, I ask that you give great thought to how you can do this. And I want you to know, I'm going to read a verse to you. 2 Corinthians verse 9, 5 through 12. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to be part of it. This verse has grabbed Teresa and I, and we're putting God to the test. And I say that very carefully. Do you know that God says, do not test him, except in one area, in your giving. In Malachi chapter 3, he says, test me and watch what I'll do in your life. Test me. So, Corinthians, Paul is talking about an offering he is taking for the poor. The poor in Jerusalem. There's a famine in Jerusalem. Paul is traveling around Europe, collecting money from other Christians to feed the poor saints in Jerusalem. And here's what he says to them. So verse 5. So I thought it necessary to urge the brethren that they would go on ahead to you and arrange beforehand your previously promised bountiful gift. The Corinthians had promised to give. Now Paul's saying, I'm sending someone ahead to help arrange this promise of yours, so that the same would be ready as a bountiful gift and not affected by covetousness. Now this I say, the one who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must do just as he has proposed in his heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. That's why I'm not going to pass a plate today. I'm not going to pass a plate that passes in front of you, because too often that creates this emotion of grudgingliness. You know the word. The imagery thereof, I can't be seen of not dropping money in a plate. So grudgingly, I don't want that. What I want is to you to give thought to this and give deep thought to how God has blessed you. He has blessed you so you enjoy your blessing, but he's blessed you so you would share your blessing. And so today we're going to have offering plates. We have the boxes back there for your regular offering. So please, thank you for your faithfulness. Continue to that end. But there's going to be some plates back there, or baskets, I guess they are. There's some baskets. As you walk out, if there's the sense God is leading you now, you know what you want to do, drop it in. If you're uncertain, go out and talk to Steve at the table. Dan will be downstairs. If you want to talk to Steve, go downstairs and have a lunch on us. Then they're here several days. If you're still uncertain, they're here several days. Contact the church office. We'll put you in contact with them. Barry.
Or you can contact me.
Contact Barry. We will write his number on the church wall. Give it out to everybody. Because they're staying with Barry. The reason is, I want us to have Christ formed in us. And unnecessary pressure to give doesn't do that. I want Christ formed in you. And Christ is generous. Christ gave up his life for us. What is he calling us to do in this specific situation for Kids International? And so this is between you and God now. And I want you to give deep thought to it. How can you have an impact? I'm going to finish reading the verse here. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that always having all sufficiency in everything, you may have an abundance for every good deed. You see, God gives seed to the sower. The imagery there, if I will sow the seed he's given me, guess what he gives me more of? More seed. And what am I supposed to do with that seed? Sow some more. And it says he gives us an abundance for everything we need so that we can have extra, so that we can help other people. Let's test God. And I hope this isn't bragging. If it is, rebuke me later. But Teresa and I have decided in our finances, and we've pushed the limits of our finances, but we've decided we're stepping out and we're going to do a site sponsorship of $100 a month and commit to Kids Alive that they can count on us. And we're saying, God, cover us. Cover us. But we're also willing to do without. We're willing to do without in order to help someone who has nothing. So, with that, Dan and Steve will be here. They'll leave Wednesday morning. If you want to sit down and chat with them, come talk to them at the table or downstairs. Set up a time with them. Call church, call Barry. We really want you to engage this and have God talk to you about what you're supposed to do. Are you with me on this? Thank you for your patience today. I'd like to pray, and then Neil's going to come forward to lead us in communion. And it's a perfect time during communion to talk to God. God, what are you telling me to do today? In light of the gift you've given me, the body and blood of Christ, what are you asking me to do? Neil, why don't you come forward while we're praying? Father, thank you for the privilege today of hearing these stories. They grab my heart, Lord. And to know that I can have some little influence is amazing. What a great feeling and responsibility. So, Lord, talk to each one of us today about our responsibility to help others, whether it's kids alive or anyone else you're calling us towards, Lord. Lead us and guide us. Speak clear to us, Father. Thank you. In Christ's name, amen.